Join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes & Co.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Is beginning. 34 million car journeys expected, and we're paying the most for our fuel of any country in Europe. Is the British motorist being persecuted? We'll discuss and debate and ask your thoughts. Is Britain broken? I've been saying it is. Times columnists think I'm completely wrong. We've got some exclusive polling for you on this show. We'll discuss all of those things, recent asylum figures too, and Hal Robson-Kanu, former Premier League and Welsh international and now ITV pundit, will tell us all about Qatar and the World Cup. But all of that comes up after the news with Bethany Elsey.
Nigel, thank you very much. Your top stories from the GB newsroom. Ambulance workers from the union Unison have announced they will stage 2 further days of strike action in a dispute over pay. Thousands of staff from 5 ambulance services in England will walk out on the 11th and 23rd of January. It will affect London, Yorkshire, the North West, North East and South West. Union leaders say the Health Secretary's refusal to discuss pay for ambulance workers and nurses has raised the prospect of even further strikes next month. But the Education Secretary, Gillian Keegan, says they must respect the independent pay review body.
You cannot have an independent pay review process which takes the politics out of pay and then have politicians intervening in that process. Not only does it blow the process up and destroy the process, but it also means what happens in future years. You know, is this going to be politicians now doing it? It's really important. It's been done by governments of different colours. The independent pay review process has been used pretty successfully, and that's what we want to continue.
Rail fares in England will rise by 5.9% in March. The government set the cap at a level well below inflation, with the Transport Secretary saying the intervention will help reduce the impact on passengers. It comes as rail workers get ready for more strike action, with RMT members in Scotland walking out on Christmas Eve until Tuesday morning. Air travel is also set to be affected, with around 250,000 passengers being warned of delays as Border Force staff strike from tomorrow.
I'm afraid if you're on the rails, possibly even in the skies, then you could face serious problems. I've never seen the trains in such disarray. There is not going to be any improvement, can you believe, until the 9th of January.
The Home Office says it's deported 42 Albanian migrants back home, which it said had no right to be in the UK. The government has come under increasing pressure to prevent migrants attempting to cross the English Channel from France. The Home Office said some of those involved arrived illegally via small boats, and others had been convicted of supplying Class A drugs. And the Prime Minister has appointed a new ethics advisor. The chairman of Historic England, Sir Laurie Magnus, will replace Lord Geit, who quit under Boris Johnson in June. His job will be to advise Mr Sunak on whether ministers are obeying their Code of Conduct rulebook. You're up to date on TV, online and DAB Plus radio. This is GB News. Now let's get back to Nigel.
Good evening. The Christmas getaway is beginning. The RAC estimate that 34 million car journeys will be made over the course of the next 2 days. It's a truly staggering number on roads, well, I'm sure you all know it, that are pretty busy already. So it could be pretty hellish in parts of the country. That's going to get made worse because there is a strike by the Highways Agency. They're striking in different regions on different days. But it can also be rather dangerous because we have smart motorways now around the country, although I find that, I must say, perhaps one of the worst chosen names ever. I think they're moronic motorways, dangerous motorways. But if you haven't got staff monitoring and putting up warning signs, that could make it very much more dangerous. What I've been talking to you about all week, or teasing all week, is what the hell is going on with fuel prices? Why are they so high? How is diesel up to 30p more expensive a litre than unleaded? And why, indeed, certainly in South London, are some garages now beginning to run out of unleaded? Not that I want to cause a rush or a scare, but it's something I've noticed. Nobody else has reported it over the course of the last week. And amidst all of that, Rishi Sunak will not deny that the fuel escalator will get put back in place in the spring budget. That would be yet another 12p a litre tax. I'm asking you, do you agree with me that British motorists are being persecuted? Give me your thoughts, give me your views, farage@gbnews.uk, because I most certainly do. And at some point, we're going to have to say enough is enough. You know, when you work it out, it isn't just our direct taxes that we're noticing. If you add on to that our indirect taxes, you realise we are becoming, I'm not exaggerating here, one of the most highly taxed economies and countries in the world. And the burden that is falling on working people, in many cases to pay for lots of people who choose not to work, that may be a separate debate, but we're being taxed to hell. Fuel. I've called in Howard Cox. He's been running the Fair Fuel campaign for more years than he cares to remember. Howard, what the hell is going on?
Well, you're absolutely right, and thank you for having me on to talk about this, because this is becoming even more critical. I've been doing this for 13 years, and I can't believe the profiteering that is absolutely manifestly clear to everyone except, it seems, the Treasury. And one of the things we've got to look at the moment in time is somehow the government have got to get on top of this. And they're the only ones that can get on top of it, both in terms of fuel taxation and the thing called pump watch, which we want to introduce, which is what we want is a consumer price regulatory watchdog. Those are the sorts of things is what 1.7 million Fair Fuel UK supporters are crying out for. And dare I say it, 37 million drivers will agree with.
Yeah, it's a large number, isn't it? So let's just go through some of the numbers in terms of profits per litre over the course of the last couple of years. OK, well, the first graph, if we can have that graph up now, fundamentally, in the last, since 2015, all the way to 2020, the profit per litre for petrol and diesel was round about 8 pence per litre. Yep. It is now a staggering 24 pence per litre. I think the graph, for those that are watching on television, the graph is pretty clear. For those listening on radio, yeah, it's basically you're saying that that the profit per litre has tripled.
Yes, and the wavy line is actually the oil price in sterling.
Yes.
So we've taken out the exchange rate issue.
Yes.
And what you're seeing is in the last 3 years, which is lockdown time, don't forget, so they've taken advantage. Why, when oil prices rise, why should you increase your profits? What's the difference? If you can still maintain your profits, you could actually, in those particular times in the last 3 years, since 2020, pump prices have been 15 to 20p too much.
And by the way, I will just say, Howard Cox, that I did, knowing you were coming on the programme, contact the Petrol Retailers Association. I asked them to put up a spokesman. They couldn't. Well, it's nearly Christmas. I get that. I asked them for a statement. I didn't get one. What on earth have they got to be afraid of?
Which is very sad, because I actually believe the Independent Retailers Association shouldn't be blamed, because most of the independent retailers are tied to very strong contracts, which they can't get out with their wholesalers. The pricing is controlled further up the fuel supply chain. And the head of the PR, Petrol Retailers Association, knows that from what I've said it many times. He supports a cut in fuel duty. All we want is fair and transparent pump pricing.
Yeah, I mean, fuel duty is one issue, but what we're now talking about here is profit per litre. And I understand that it's the supermarkets that are the real villains of the piece at the moment.
Yes, that's changed again in the last couple of years for some reason or another, and it must be due to the cost of living crisis because supermarkets are protecting their core business. Do you remember the days when, to encourage footfall, they used to say if you spend £50, you can have 5 to 10p a litre off using a voucher. Everyone loved it, and it wasn't a loss leader because supermarkets don't tend to buy from wholesalers; they buy direct from the refinery. Of course. So they don't have a middleman
because
to pay.
Because they're big enough.
They're big enough to buy, and half of the fuel dispensed in this country goes through supermarkets.
Is there a shortage of unleaded? Why am I seeing petrol stations in South London for 2 or 3 days this week without any unleaded?
I don't think there is a shortage. I think there is a supply problem for certain wholesalers are actually getting some supplies out to certain areas. I repeat what you said earlier. You don't need to have a run in it. You don't have to start queuing for petrol. But there is some issues of supply with certain wholesalers.
Now let's get to the issue that really, really gets my goat as someone that drives a diesel car.
Yes.
Of course I drive diesel because Mr. Blair told me it was good for the environment, if we remember. I can't believe it. The differential is up to 30p. What the hell is going on?
Well, if we got another graph, that second graph, which is the pricing differential, it'd be nice to see that come up. Fundamentally, again, we're looking at a situation where normally pump prices, and this is a graph to show the difference between petrol and diesel and how it's risen in the last 6 months. Since June the 1st, this is. It used to be around about 4 to 5p more diesel.
Yes.
We're the only country that does that because we still tax it the same as petrol. Other countries tax diesel less because they recognise it's the commercial heartbeat of any economy that should be in terms of distribution and logistics. But you can see in the graph here, just see the incredible difference, which you've alluded to, 20, 30p difference now we're looking at. It's averaging about 23, 24p. The reason being is because there's more demand for diesel. And we import a lot of diesel, and unfortunately, speculators have got their mitts around making it, and they actually hold a lot of diesel offshore and bring it in when they need it, when it's profitable.
Yeah, and there's a very powerful point for all of you here, and it's this. Much of UK refining has closed down, and it's closed down because our cost of energy is so high because of our commitment to net zero. And at least 20% of the diesel that goes into our cars and vans is refined in Russia. But actually, because of transshipping through Rotterdam, it could be as high as 40%.
Yes.
So we used to actually refine all of our own petrol and diesel. We're not doing it. That partially perhaps helps to explain it.
It certainly does. And so even now, I looked at the graph before I came on the show today, that imports into Europe, 40% still comes from Russia for diesel.
It is 40, isn't it?
Yeah, it is 40%.
Yeah, so we're conning ourselves if we think we're just 20.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we mustn't forget also, most of the heavy oils is used in heating oils as well, and they're rocketing as well. And because there's demand for energy, it seems to be spuriously linked, this pricing, because energy prices are going up. Let's put diesel prices up.
Yeah, well, I have to say, it really does make me very angry. Final thought. The Prime Minister, on a very rare outing this week, because he's generally in hiding, it seems to me, was asked a question about the fuel escalator. Explain.
Well, we learned last year, in the autumn statement, Jeremy Hunt stood up, and it's the first time in my 13 years campaigning, fuel duty wasn't mentioned. There was no mention whatsoever. OK, fine. We thought, OK, they cut it by 5p. Rishi did back in March. Thank you very much. It didn't touch the sides because the oil prices rocketed at the time. But thank you, we got a 5p cut. Most other countries did 20p cut, but that's an aside. And then 2 hours after that autumn statement, the OBR stood up with a press conference to tell us there's a planned 23% increase in fuel duty, which is equivalent to around about 12p in fuel duty. Put VAT on it, it gets close to 15p. That's what he said. Now, at the liaison committee this week, he was interviewed. He was asked a direct question, are we going to keep fuel duty? We're not going to put that fuel duty rise up. He said, well, I would rather not comment. As you know, as a chancellor, I can't do that on fiscal matters. They're not denying it.
And if that rise goes through, that is disastrous for particularly small businesses, you know, deliveries, etc., driving around. It actually puts inflation up when we're trying to reduce inflation and possibly cost jobs as well.
Well, tomorrow, a CBR report which I commissioned will tell you exactly the problem. It will put CPI up by 2.6%.
Wow.
It's incredible. It'll reduce GDP by 1%.
Wow.
I mean, what chancellor on earth would actually encourage lost jobs, increased inflation and a cut in GDP? Explain, go figure.
And yet, the building behind us, the Palace of Westminster, there seem to be very few members of Parliament even aware. I mean, I think most of them actually dress in lycra and ride bicycles, or many of them do, not all of them. But this disconnect, 37 million drivers, we are being persecuted. There's no question about that in my mind. There's no big political voice here, is there?
No, there isn't. But tomorrow, in fact, it's actually gone out today. Jonathan Gullis, bless his cotton socks, Stoke-on-Trent North MP, has put together a letter to Jeremy Hunt asking, and he's got the support of some big names. He got about 30 signatures very quickly to calling on a pump watch body. We need to actually find out how pump pricing takes place. What is this magic formula that when oil goes up, when it comes down, what's going on? As you know, it goes up like a rocket, comes down like a feather. You've heard the adage many times. Fundamentally, he's put that letter in, and we need to get pump watching process, plus that cut in duty next year.
Howard Cox, as ever, thank you. Well, sorry, folks, you're picking up the tab for this over the course of the next couple of days as you fill your cars up and travel off to see your relations. In a moment, and it's linked to this story really, in a moment, is Britain broken? Are we living in broken Britain? I've been saying for the last few weeks we are. The Times think I'm completely wrong. In a moment, Professor Matthew Goodwin gives us some exclusive polling on the subject.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prisons? I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
I asked you, are British motorists being persecuted by this government? Your responses are, well, pretty clear, actually. Stuart says yes, an abused cash cow. Another says, have been for a long time. They are trying to price us out and go all electric. Another says, always been an easy target. Yeah, well, that's absolutely true. But all of that's true, folks, but it's getting much, much worse. You saw those graphs that Howard Cox showed you. The profits per litre have tripled over the course of the last 2 years. Now, the petrol retailers, although they wouldn't come on the programme, say it's because of increased costs of running their garages. Well, maybe some of it is. Finally, Sean says, if you've got a motor, you're an easy target. The Treasury need to get back the furlough money, so it's up to, well, yes, who's going to pay for it? We are. I guess we are. Now, a theme that I've been developing on this programme, and I am never negative. You know, my entire political career wasn't about being negative. It was about looking for what I believe to be positive solutions. But I have been analysing over the last few weeks that I believe we're living in broken Britain. Nothing actually works. 12 years of Tory rule, the national debt is 4 times higher, furlough part of it, but 4 times higher than it was. The NHS isn't working. Nothing. None of our public services work like they used to. You can't get a GP appointment. You often can't get your kid into the local primary school, and I could go on and on. Well, yesterday in the Times, Danny Finkelstein, Lord Finkelstein, of course, Conservative peer, said, don't fall for the gloomy tales of British decline, and basically don't listen to Farage. And they published a photograph of me in the column, which is funny, isn't it? They can choose a nice photograph of you or a very less obliging photograph of you. Well, I did ask Lord Finkelstein to come on the programme, but he's the director of Chelsea Football Club and they're playing tonight. But he is going to come into the studio because we want to have good, open, honest, head-to-head debate. But I believe I'm right with my analysis that Britain is broken. Well, joining me is Professor Matthew Goodwin. And Matthew, you've got some exclusive polling for us here at GB News on Broken Britain. What does it say?
Yeah, so we put this statement to a representative sample of British voters. We said nothing in Britain works anymore. To what extent do you agree or disagree with this statement? 57% of the country, nearly 6 in 10 voters agree. They say nothing in Britain is really working anymore. Only 19% are disagreeing with that. It's actually a view that unites Leavers and Remainers. They're as likely as one another to say, you know what, nothing in Britain works anymore. And the reason I think this is important, I think it's really important, is because this, I think, is going to guarantee actually the Conservatives' defeat at the next election, because competency, the belief that the government is making the country better, really matters. And these voters are very hacked off.
And you said it's Leavers and Remainers who feel very much the same way on this.
Yeah.
What about Conservative and Labour voters?
Well, Labour voters, the most likely of all to say nothing in Britain's working anymore. Perhaps not too surprising. We've got a Conservative government. Yeah. But Conservatives too, actually. I mean, if you look at the numbers, more than half of all Conservatives are saying nothing in Britain, even under a Conservative government, is working anymore. And I think it's this sense, we all can pick it up in our own, friendship groups and families, this sense that actually nothing is really functioning as it should be in Britain at the moment. And this sense is overwhelming. The other thing, just briefly, that we pick up in the polling now is just the sheer numbers of people who say, I don't back any of them on any of these issues, on the economy, on inflation, on immigration. I'm just not even going over to the Labour Party necessarily. I'm just saying none of the above. I've not seen this level of disillusionment really since the early 2010s.
Yeah, there was a time, wasn't there, in the early 2010s when it looked like we had 3 Social Democrat parties. You couldn't put anything between them. Maybe we're heading back towards that time, but the disenchantment's greater now, I think, don't you?
I think it's very real. I think we've got a sort of perfect storm. You've got inflation, you've got interest rates, you've got the energy crisis, cost of living. I noticed on Twitter the other day somebody joked, well, now that Brexit's happened, well, at least we've got the borders under control, right? Well, actually, that's not really happening either. So if you're a Leaver, you're a Remainer, a Labour voter, a Conservative voter, a Lib Dem, a Green, whatever, the one thing actually that unifies us as a country, contrary to Daniel Finkelstein's column, I think it's a very interesting column, but I don't think his finger's on the pulse here. The vast majority of people in this country are actually saying, this isn't working for me. And that will have political effects.
That's how I feel about it, absolutely. And Matthew, you've got some other exclusive polling which you're going to be releasing on GB News Breakfast tomorrow morning.
Yeah,
at 7
we've got some
o'clock.
interesting stuff, actually. We've asked, this is the year of 3 Prime Ministers, of course. We've had Boris Johnson, Liz Truss, Rishi Sunak. We've asked voters, which of those Prime Ministers do you think was the best?
Oh, gosh, I think I'd be a don't know.
We've got some polling on the strikes. We've got some polling on the Rwanda plan, which obviously the government is now hoping it can get moving after the High Court judgment. So lots of interesting stuff. And of course, that key headline voting intention. Can the Conservatives actually get out of the 20s, which is where they are, 25, 26% averaging? I mean, this is worse than a 97 wipeout. This is terrible territory for Rishi Sunak and his party to be in.
Well, if over 50% of Conservative voters, after 12 years of Tory rule, think Britain is broken, they've got a pretty big problem. Matthew Goodwin, as ever, great stuff. Thank you for joining us. In a moment, I'll give you an update on the asylum situation. There have been some deportations to Albania today, but against that, we learned from Suella Braverman the full cost for next year, how much money it's going to cost you to manage the asylum system. All of that when I'm back with you in a couple of minutes.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
There's a guy who went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club. Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512,
Virgin Media Channel 604,
Freesat Channel 216,
Freeview Channel 236,
and YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio,
with the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm sorry to say, but Brexit is back as part of the national debate. I really wish it wasn't, because after all, remember, we were going to have an oven-ready deal. It was all going to be fantastic, free trade with Europe, but opened up, of course, to the rest of the world. It was all going to be tickety-boo. Just vote for Boris and it's all going to get sorted out and we're going to become competitive, and so much is going to happen. Well, overnight, the British Chambers of Commerce have expressed Their disappointment. They say that 77% of their members are feeling no benefit at all from Brexit whatsoever. And those that are involved with importing and exporting from Europe are finding, well, whilst there are no direct tariffs and whilst there are no quotas, there are all sorts of customs restrictions and in some places costs, and that, should we say, the French behaviour towards trade is erratic, to say the very least. Well, of course it is. They want Brexit to fail. We knew that from day one. If Brexit seemed to be a success, other countries in Europe might want to do the same. The failing, in my view, is that the Conservative government have not put in place the reforms, the simplifications that could have benefited not just every small business in Britain, but actually our biggest insurance companies, investment houses, and many others. They've literally, in 3 years, with a majority of 80, done absolutely nothing. So there is a growing level of disenchantment with Brexit. Bear in mind you, that the British Chambers of Commerce was so pro-Remain that when their Director General, John Longworth, suggested back in 2016 that maybe leaving was an option, he was sacked on the spot. But David Maddox, political editor of Daily Express Online, you know, that was then, this is now. If I was asked by a Guardian pollster, am I disappointed with Brexit? I'm afraid I'm going to say yes. Is this issue back as a political issue? Where do you see this going?
I think it is back as a political issue, and I think it's for two reasons. I think it's irrevocably tied to the coup, which happened a few weeks ago and installed Rishi Sunak. And, you know, I know Rishi supported Leave.
I'm told he did.
Yeah.
I didn't see him.
No, but I mean, I spoke to him at the time,
Okay.
and he delayed his career by supporting Leave. He didn't do much campaigning, maybe, but the people who've installed him are largely Remainers within the Conservative Party, and the people running the Treasury, the current Chancellor, is a Remainer. He claims to have been converted, but
It's interesting, David. I mean, you know, when I use words like coup, you know, I'm accused of being, you know, wild-eyed conspiracy theorist and living on the fringes of society and all. But you, as you know, the political editor of the Express Online, you do believe it was a coup.
I believe it was a coup, and I think they engineered it in a way, certainly in the aftermath of Liz Truss saying she would go, they engineered it in a way to ensure pretty much that Rishi Sunak would be the only candidate to get enough nominations. I mean, it was a ridiculously high threshold. And, you know, again, whatever his personal views are, the people who installed him are largely anti-Brexit. And
I mean, you see, one of the measures here, David, and this is very relevant, I think, to what you've just said. One of the measures here that the British Chambers of Commerce are asking for, they're saying that our members would like to continue to use the EU's CE marking of product quality instead of switching it for the new UKCA. I mean, they're almost saying here that we just stay within the single market, we stay within single rules, within their rules, we lose any opportunity to establish competitive advantage. Is that where we're going?
Well, I mean, this is part of a wider attempt to undermine the benefits of Brexit. I mean, on one hand, we've seen the Conservative Party, you rightly put it, the Conservative Party completely dropped the ball on this and totally missed out on the opportunities of Brexit, completely failed to rationalise and so forth. And on the other hand, we're seeing these drip of Remainiac groups, whether it's people from the Bank of England, whether it's the British Chambers of Commerce and others, all saying, oh, well, Brexit's a failure, usually quoting figures from which are a result of the pandemic and so forth. And chucking in small things. And isn't it interesting that, you know, the Jeremy Hunt thing just the other week on the Swiss model, which is essentially staying in the single market and taking instruction from Brussels.
Yes, I mean, the Swiss relationship with the European Union has deteriorated.
It has.
Through EU bullying, they're being dragged closer. But there are Tories too. I mean, Conservative peer Gavin Barwell, who of course was there, very close in number 10 to Theresa May. We have to reduce the very damaging barriers to trade we have introduced with our nearest neighbours. So it is happening, absolutely.
Well, Barwell, of course, was one of the reasons it took so long to get a proper Brexit deal that actually involved leaving the EU.
Final quick thought, David, if I may. In 2019, when Boris Johnson went to the country with what was basically the Brexit Party line, did they really believe in it?
I think a lot of them did. A lot of the MPs did. I actually think Boris Johnson did to a certain degree. Maybe not as in a deep-seated way that you and I believe it, but I think he did believe in it. I think the pandemic and the whole going down a rabbit hole on that really derailed the whole process. And when they came out of it, it was kind of like trying to sort out Brexit had become an afterthought, as opposed to the kind of raison d'etre of his government, which is what it should have been.
Stay with me. Quick migrant update. Quite important, all of this. Now, you know that we're being told constantly by left-wing pressure groups what a beastly, ghastly nation we are. Why don't we take in more people? Why don't we let everyone that crosses the Channel stay because they're all poor, desperate refugees? Well, last year, we gave refuge to over 100,000 people. Take Japan, for argument's sake. A modern, civilised country, a signatory, of course, to the UN Charter on Refugees. They took 100 last year. So don't let anyone tell you that we are somehow ghastly. We certainly are not. But Suella Braverman has told us that next year the cost of asylum is going to be £3.5 billion sterling. That's £3.5 billion sterling for putting people up in hotels, accommodation centres and processing. But I think they've cracked it on processing. Yes, I really do. You see, we got the figures for the last year this morning. Hard to believe that over 3/4 of those who've come into the country, often via illegal means using traffickers, over 3/4 that have been processed have had their applications approved to stay. Compare that to just 25% in France. That's how they solve the backlog. They say you can all stay. Well, against that, there have been some deportations today. 42 people have been sent back to Albania. 33 of them have been convicted of very, very serious crimes. But when you think about the numbers of Albanians that have come in the last few months, it doesn't even make a dent on it. David Maddox, just giving a sort of quick sort of end-of-year roundup, really, on this. Isn't this issue their biggest problem of all with their own voters?
It is, actually. I had coffee with Suella Braverman a few weeks ago, and I said to her, this was actually before she temporarily was relieved of her job, but I said, you've basically got one job. You've got to stop. You've got to stop the illegal migration, let alone get a grip on legal migration. But it's a lot of the backbenchers are yet to be convinced that the measures announced the other week are enough. Frankly, I'd be surprised if anything short of leaving the ECHR would be enough. But we'll wait and see.
Well, yes, I'm absolutely with you on that. Yeah. But if you're a Conservative Member of Parliament that suggests leaving the ECHR, it's a wash your mouth out with soap and water job. In a moment, it's Talking Pints with a very different drink, one I haven't really tried before. And yeah, it's going to be very, very different, I promise you, because Hal Robson-Kanu, who of course played football for Wales and is now an ITV pundit, he's now in the health food sector. Who knows, he might convert me.
Join me, Calvin Robinson, on Christmas Eve and Day to explore how this special period has become a source of hope with an especially festive show. Expect Christmas carols, nativity readings, and interviews with special guests. And it's all filmed in a church for that proper Christmas feeling. Christmas, a message of hope at 2 p.m. on Christmas Eve and 5 a.m. and 11 a.m. on Christmas Day. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Deems & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
We are GB News, the People's Channel. Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing. You see, amazing.
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
It's time for Talking Pints. This time, for the first time ever on this segment, the drinks are going to come at the end. I know this looks a little bit different. We'll explain it all as and when we get there. I'm very pleased to be joined by Hal Robson-Kanu. Hal, you know, for someone who's been a Premier League footballer, international footballer, now a big pundit on telly, you know, it happens, doesn't it, that famous footballers get to meet celebrities and get to meet royalty and get to meet stars. But you began your life meeting all of these people. Tell us about the first years of Hal's life.
Yeah, no, so my upbringing was relatively unique in the sense where my grandfather was Vicar of Kensington. And at that moment in time, you know, the parish was, you know, it was booming, and everyone, there was, you know, a fantastic group and community in that area who were, you know, obviously would attend St Mary Abbott's Church on a weekly basis, and it was capacity every week. And so I saw my grandfather, you know, adored by so many different people, as well as my grandmother, who was obviously the vicar's wife. And so I had a very unique experience in terms of upbringing because, you know, the vicarage backs onto Billionaires Row. You know, it backs onto obviously what is Kensington Palace. Yeah. And so, you know, I saw lots of different people in all different walks of life from a very early age, which I think for me was really informative, particularly then ultimately going into football, where there's a lot of adulation again, and there's a lot of hype
But this is growing up, and you've got sort of Princess Margaret's around the place, and Diana's around the place, and the Jaggers are around. I mean, extraordinary, really.
Yeah, it was extraordinary for sure, and I think it allowed me to sort of see different, as I said, different walks of life, because they're normal people. You know, as much as we build them up, and as much as the media and the press will build them up, and they're normal people, and they're relatively relatively, simple in terms of what they want from life. They generally want to have a good life and are trying to do what they can do to have that. So yeah, it was, as I said, really unique. Very grateful, and it also allowed me to have a level of grounding because my grandmother would, stop and speak with any homeless person on the streets of Kensington, and they would see her coming and they would know she'd stop and she'd bend down and actually talk to them, touch them. And I was a 3, 4, 5-year-old child at the time, and it sort of opened your eyes in terms of that passion and that kindness, and something which again, Princess Diana was very much well known for.
No, absolutely. But from being a little boy, you wanted to be a footballer, and you suffered 1 or 2 injuries in your teens, and we're going to come back to those injuries. But, in the end, you get there and you're playing for Reading and you're scoring goals and you get promoted to the Premier League. That must have been a huge moment.
Yeah, look, every kid's dream who plays football is to play in the Premier League, and that's what you want to do, and that was mine. And so to have achieved it, still relatively young age, I think I was 21, 22 at the time, was a very proud moment. But the background behind that for me meant more because, I suffered 2 major cruciate knee ligament injuries as a teenager, and the doctors the surgeon who operated at the time said I would never play pain-free again. And so after 2.5 years on the treatment table, really not expecting to have a career and certainly not expecting to get to the heights of, Premier League, playing in the Premier League, playing against the world's
real dream.
Best players. Yeah, it was a really special moment for me and a real proud achievement.
Injury is, for all professional sports players, all sports players, injury is just a complete nightmare. But you go on from that and, it's West Bromwich Albion and I understand you hold a Premier League record. You were the only person in one game to come on as a substitute, score a goal, and get sent off. Tell us about that.
You've been doing your research, Nigel. Yeah, really good. That was at Burnley away for West Bromwich Albion, and yeah, it was really innocuous, to be honest. I've caught the opposition player with my elbow accidentally. I think there was a bit of blood around as well, and it happens. It wasn't nice, but it wasn't intentional. But the referee thought it was.
Well, that may not be the record that you want, but the thing that people will remember you for, of course, is playing for Wales. And, sort of Johan Cruyff-like, turning and scoring. Kind of Welsh football, having been in the doldrums, it's been going through some better years, hasn't it?
Yeah, it has. And I think that was part of a generation of players and managers who changed the shape of Welsh football. And again, I qualified to play for Wales through my grandmother, who was born in Caerphilly. And so they brought together a group of players who were playing at the top level, surrounding an elite player in Gareth Bale and other obviously top players too. But we were able to generate a level of success, and fundamentally it was down to the team and the togetherness that we achieved it. And it really started from Gary Speed, who unfortunately passed away and committed suicide, which was very difficult period for all of the players involved. But he was the real catalyst to make that change in allowing Welsh players and a Welsh team to compete at an international level, and obviously we've just seen another international.
Well, I'm going to say, you were part of that as it was beginning and reaching the finals of the Euros and stuff. But the first time since 1958, that Wales have been to, and you were there, of course, in Qatar. What does that mean for Welsh football?
Yeah, again, I think for all of the home nations, being British, I think it's important that they do well, because it changes shape. You saw when England went out of the tournament, everyone's downhearted the next day. It was a Saturday night. I don't know if you watched the game, but 23 million people watching.
I think cheesed off's an understatement.
So I think, and it's the same for Welsh, but I think as for the home nations, I think it's fantastic to see them doing well. And in that 2016 tournament, we carried the home nation through to the semi-finals, and we came back heroes.
You beat Belgium.
We did.
You're one of the great. No, it must have been a wonderful, wonderful moment for you.
Yes. Yeah.
Talking of England. Losing and a bit unlucky, really. We didn't play badly at all, I thought. But hey, there you were on ITV with this vast audience watching. Do you enjoy being a pundit?
It's good because I think, there's not many players who have recently finished playing who are talking on the game and giving their insight.
So you've gone in quite quickly, really?
Yeah, relatively quickly. But I think it's a good opportunity, as I said, to share some real current insight into players. And a lot of players, when they're playing, you can't necessarily say the things that you want to say. And sometimes that's at detriment to yourself and to your perception, because actually you would have dealt with the situation in a different manner, but it may not have been politically correct or, for the club's interest, and you're ultimately employed by the club. And we saw the fallout with Ronaldo at Manchester United, what can happen when a player, says something against the grain.
Yeah.
And so, I think for me, it's a really unique opportunity. And again, I was in a position where I finished playing because I wanted to focus on building a business in health drinks, health shots. And obviously we're talking pints, we should be talking shots.
No, we're going to do it. Don't worry, we're going to do it.
That was the real passion of mine in allowing me to, ultimately bring health and wellness to people in all different walks of life.
And finishing off with the World Cup, you were there with Gary Neville, of course.
Yes.
Gary decided to make it a party political broadcast on behalf of, it might have been the Labour Party or a party to the left of that. How did that go down? Yeah,
look, I think Gary Neville, he's clearly talking on some very important topics. And actually, as I said before, a lot of players won't do that. And they'll actually say, well, I'm going to take a step back and I'm not going to get involved. But he's putting himself forward. So I think that, first and foremost, deserves credit in terms of what he's saying, and the positioning of what he's trying to get across. Of course, it can be taken in very different ways, but it's coming from a good place. And actually, in my opinion, I would say he is closer to the everyday person than the majority of politicians.
He may not be, but I think to compare, strikers in this country to people who worked on the stadiums in Qatar was right. I think ITV have got a problem here, because if you're going to go on doing that, they're going to have somebody with an opposing political view, and then there won't be any football. And having suffered, as you said, and having, in a way, been very fortunate to have a football career at all, given the cruciate ligament problems, takes us into turmeric, your business, and these drinks. So take it away.
Yeah, so essentially I used this blend of raw turmeric with other potent natural ingredients such as watermelon, pineapple, pomegranate to effectively recover from the pain that I was experiencing from the injuries that I'd had. And so I was using anti-inflammatories, which my body was having adverse effects to. I would pass blood in my urine the day after having had them, and I would have severe nausea as well. So I couldn't shift this pain without taking these prescribed drugs, or I had to continue to try and persevere and try and play it with a level of restriction, which is impossible for any footballer. And you mentioned that pain and injury is the worst thing for footballers. Pain and injury is the worst thing for anyone in any walk of life.
Fair point.
And a lot of people suffer from that in silence on a daily basis. So this product, as I said, the blend, my father actually created it by combining these raw natural ingredients. And within 6 weeks of taking it, I was pain-free. And this was from 17 to 18. A year later, I made my first team debut. A year after that, I made my international debut and went on to have the career that I had. And I was using these shots as my secret weapon throughout my whole career. And the reason why I decided to bring it to market was because we saw what was on shelf in retailers. We realised that there were functional ingredients, functional products, which actually really weren't. So if you look at the majority of, say, functional shots on shelf, they're full of apple juice. They are very low in the raw functional properties of the key functional ingredients. So things like turmeric, ginger, pineapple. So what we've done is bring a product which really changed my life.
And it's your business.
To market.
Your business, you believe in it. You've got customers that believe in it. Big Pharma don't like you. But I think it's only appropriate then that we do the honours.
Yeah, exactly. Make sure you shake it well.
All right.
Please, yeah. There we go.
I'm such a novice at this. I don't know what to do. Right. And it's a down in one.
It's a shot, yeah.
It's a shot.
It's not a pint, it's a shot.
Right, very good. Thank you. Here goes. Well, oh gosh, a kick to that.
Yes, very good.
I'm not sure it's going to be my number one Christmas drink, but it's okay. And Hal, thank you for joining me on Talking Pints, and very good luck with the business.
Thank you, Nigel. Pleasure. That was good.
OK, not long left. Let's get some questions. One viewer asks, should the England team stop taking the knee? Nobody else did at the World Cup, did they?
Yeah, I think, again, you look at a lot of the players in the Premier League, particularly black players who have probably stopped doing that early on and actually stopped doing that during lockdown. The likes of Wilfried Zaha actually stopped doing that. And these are the guys who are actually being racially abused. So, yeah, I think it's time that actual action is taken, rather than gesturing.
No, good point. Oh, it's all football tonight. John asks, was Qatar a successful World Cup?
In what sense? So I would say, from a footballing spectacle, the World Cup is the World Cup, and it should be like that.
And it was a great final.
And it was a phenomenal tournament, phenomenal final. In terms of the human rights issues, in terms of bringing awareness to really some bad issues, I think that's been a success also. What wasn't a success is how Qatar won the World Cup. What wasn't a success is the controversy around that, and actually having to then deal with that live on television and talk on these topics 12 years after the World Cup was issued to Qatar
and that
was absurd.
No, it was.
So, yeah, I think they're multiple.
And finally, do you have a favourite Christmas song? Yes, it's Chris Rea's Driving Home for Christmas with very, very expensive unleaded or diesel in the tank. I want to wish you all a very happy Christmas. I'll be back with you on the 27th, 28th and 29th next week. Thanks to Hal, thanks to all my guests. Handing you over now into the capable hands of Patrick Christys.
Yes, very good stuff, that, Nigel. Right, OK, I've got loads coming your way. I'm, of course, covering again for Mark Stein. Victory for GB News. Victory re a grooming gang investigation. Charlie Peters will be bringing you the latest on that. How much does each channel migrant actually cost you, the British taxpayer? We've got an interview with Joe Biden's lifelong friend, and silent thoughts are potentially about to become a crime. Who would have thunk it? I will be with you all the way through from 8 until 9. I'll be back in just a tick. Make sure you get in touch, by the way. GBviews at gbnews.uk. And you too can pummel the Patrick. That's right. Everybody's dream. I'll see you after the weather and the break.
Good evening, I'm Alex Deakin, and this is your latest weather update from the Met Office. A wet and windy spell of weather spreading northwards during tomorrow. Not great news if you're heading for the roads. Mostly it'll be dry during daylight hours across Scotland, where it'll be pretty chilly. But in the south, as well as being wet, there will be pretty mild conditions too. Weather fronts just trickling in here, made for a misty, murky day across much of the south. And that mist and low cloud just sticking around overnight. Quite foggy on some of the higher routes as well. Many places dry until we see some heavier rain coming into the southwest by dawn. It's going to be very mild here, but colder conditions further north. Frost certainly across northern Scotland, and the showers coming in across Shetland will be turning to snow. But it'll be rain across the southwest. This will be quite heavy rain accompanied by gusty winds affecting Wales, the Midlands, southeast England during the morning. So just something to bear in mind if you are heading for